Hi, everyone. Welcome to the penultimate webinar of 2023. Today, we are doing VR. I got my trusty VR headset. The name's Nat, and welcome to our Thursday webinars. Every week, we learn about neurodiversity, the brain, neuroscience, and to essentially better understand who we are, why we are, how we think, and how to mitigate some of the challenges that surrounds us. Today, we are going to be exploring virtual reality and mental health. Next week, we're going to be doing a deep dive on ADHD, but today is like laying the foundations and bringing everyone up to speed. VR stands for virtual reality, and I have been playing a lot on it lately. I've even, because of my terrible vision, you can't see it, but I've got my own little lenses in there. So prescription. Ooh, I'm like that cool guy that was swimming who has the prescription goggles. There's no other way around it. Is it a good thing? Because I'm curious to know if any of you have used VR before. Is it a fad? Is it something that might be useful in the future? Is it too early to say? These are the type of questions we're going to be looking into. Now, today we are predominantly focusing on mental health more general, even though we're an organization that supports neurodiverse individuals. Why? Because it is early days when it's coming to neurodivergent research and VR. Where mental health, we've already got a solid foundation. That is why we're kicking it off in that realm to begin with. Here's a picture of me and why you might want to listen to me. But forget all that junk. The main thing is I actually play with VR and I love kind of testing it and looking at what apps. Recently, we did an event at the Walkie Talkie in London and we were using VR to show people what it was like to have autism to create a sense of empathy. And actually, it worked really well. It took a little bit to get the technology up and running, but when it worked, it really worked. Oh, Lauren says, I'm curious how to get the prescription lenses in the headset. I wear contacts, so not immediately applicable to me, but sometimes it's nice to wear. Do you know, I got them from, I can't remember what website I got them, but if you just like, whatever your headset is, I got a MetaQuest. So if I said MetaQuest prescription lenses, easy enough to find, wasn't too bad, cost me about £40, but putting them on with my glasses time and time again, it gets annoying. Not a bad investment if you use it quite often. Here's our lovely team. Today you've got myself, you've got April, and then you've got Izzy. You've got a good bunch of us today. You're being spoiled. The last webinar we've got uploaded is the history of neuroscience. This is just having a look about how far we've come in the last few 100,000 years. So if you're ever interested in our previous webinars, do go on our YouTube channel, check them out, learn about these things. For instance, we have been playing with the brain for a long time. But yeah, it was good fun, a good deep dive. VR, virtual reality, neurodiversity, and mental health. We are deep diving into mental health today as it sets a really good foundation for next week, where we're looking at the cutting edge on how it might support people with autism or ADHD. Now, there is a little bit of research on neurodiversity, autism, and VR. So all VR is when we watch videos, we're watching it flat. Don't get me wrong, I love watching a bit like TV, but around us, we can see the real world. It's not that immersive. Where VR, it takes you in its own sort of universe, and no matter where you look, it tracks you, and you can see your surroundings. It's not perfect, but our brains are not perfect. And actually, it's really easy to confuse our brains. Even if you have, say, a really ugly spider, if you're scared of spiders, you're still going to be scared of the VR spider. And maybe we can use that in order to support people who have social phobias or those who hear voices or struggle with interviews. There's a lot of applications which haven't been fully realized yet. And let's face it, mental health support, particularly in the NHS, sucks. They're doing the best they can, but it's not good. And it's because it costs a lot of money. It's a lot of time, resources. What if you could just give them a VR headset and say, there you go, look after yourself? Obviously, we wouldn't want that completely, but if it could take a bit of pressure off the system or create support which is more tactile and three-dimensional. So today, if successful, we're going to look at exactly what is VR. We're going to look at VR and mental health. So how does it apply to that? A lot of the time, people are just playing like Beat Saber or like pretending to have lightsabers, like playing interactive games, but it does have more applications than just fun. We were talking about how real VR is. I know it's a computer. I know it's not real. Then why does it work in supporting people? And this all comes down to what exactly is reality? How does our brains process? The world around us may not even look like how we think it looks. It's our brain's interpretations of the visual information that is being sent to it. if our brain is manipulating the world around us, can we not manipulate it also? We're also going to be looking at the pros and the cons, where we think it might benefit and aid support, where it might completely replace current systems, and where it has its shortcomings. Now, for potential new terms, just to make sure, because I appreciate this is a new subject for a lot of people, so I'm going to go through these, and excuse me if I'm like, you already know them, but I just want to make sure we're on the same level. Cyber sickness. It's a real thing. If any of you get car sickness, I'm in the car for 5 seconds and I'm like, VR is a nightmare. I personally have really struggled with motion sickness. It's because our brains like to connect things. When you're walking, the brain, it knows you're walking, it sees you walking, it's fine. But when there's this disconnect, so when you're in a car, you are not moving. You don't have the wind, you don't have other kind of senses, but you're still moving, and it confuses the brain. And the brain does not like being confused. It gets sick. And the same in VR. Your brain is, all right, so I'm in this kind of room at the moment. I'm moving, but physically I'm not moving. And I don't understand this. It does disappear over time. But a top tip with VR, if you are feeling dizzy, stop it. Do not work through it. The brain doesn't get used to it. It just gets worse and worse. Exposure techniques. This is gradual VR used to increase comfort. Let's say you're really scared of dogs. You would slowly look at dogs in VR in 3-dimensionals and pet them. You wouldn't go straight in. You'd do it slowly. We got vocational rehabilitation. This essentially is learning job skills. Imagine you've got a phobia of talking to people, but you're trying to get a job in retail. You can see why that would be a bit of a challenge. VR could soften the blow. CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. I'm sure that a lot of you have tried it. Currently, this is the number one way of supporting individuals with mental health that is not medication. This is not perfect, but it is what we got at the moment. Avatar therapy. This is talking to VR characters for hallucination helps. It can help you understand what's real and not real. We've got immersion. So this is how real something is. If you are watching something like you're watching the original Lion King, which is the best film ever, you know it's not real, but you love it. But it's got lots of human emotions, so you're connecting with those little cute lions. But if you watch the new Lion King, that's done in like super 3D and computer rendering, it looks really real, but they have no emotions. So there's different levels of engagement. It's not just how realistic it is, but it's how much it connects with you. Body image, this is our self-perception. And we're going to be looking a little bit at eating disorders as well today, which can also benefit from VR. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Psychosis, this is when you see or hear things that aren't real. And social skills training. And that's just improving interactive skills through VR. These are some of the areas that we'll touch upon. My first question is, have you actually ever used VR? How many people are familiar with it? And how many are like, oh, futuristic, but I've never touched one? There are lots of different headsets. You've got ones that plug into your computer. You've got ones that, like the one I have, which doesn't require any wires. You can have ones that you can use your phone and put it to like little cardboard cutouts. There's lots of different types. But headset VR is only one type. Remember, it's virtual reality, so it doesn't have to be a headset. VR or virtual reality is a computer-generated environment that can interact with using a headset and gloves, controller, could be used for gaming or healthcare. When we say VR, we always think headset, but it doesn't have to. Oh, Gregory says it's horribly dangerous, especially when you're moving about in a space when blindfolded. Not good for challenging, surely. Yeah, I can't read that, but it is dangerous. I was playing a boxing game recently, just in my house, boxing around, and I was getting really carried away. And I was shuffling on the floor without realizing it. And I punched as hard as I could. Bear in mind, it's not that hard, but still as hard enough as I could for me, and smashed a metal chair. So hurt. It really hurt. My hand was like dead. It can be dangerous and it does need supervision. Okay, so a lot of you have not used it, as only two of you have. I can see this becoming more and more utilized within the next kind of like decade. I really do. And the rate of improvement is astounding. Don't call the Apple Vision Pro is coming soon, like Apple's version. And I think it's going to blow us all out of the water. It's also going to blow our bank accounts up. But with most things, they're getting cheaper and cheaper. The Facebook version of VR, you get it for $250 now. Not bad at all. Oh, April says, although I didn't use a headset, I once had a go with a VR experience that featured an autistic boy in a shopping center. Yes, April, that is a really good example. And I think I mentioned that next one. Caution is definitely necessary. I'm dyspraxic as well. Honestly, yeah, dyspraxia and VR, I'm all over the shop. It does get easier over time though. A quick history, just so we're all up to speed. How old is VR? What's been happening? 1950s, we first started experimenting with it and looking at multi-sensory experiences. Still really early, but probably older than you might have thought. Then 1960s and 70s, we created these headsets. We had computerized worlds. These were mainly for military and research. The military always gets the cool stuff to begin with. We always get it like hand-me-downs, but that's when we had it. Then looking in like 80s, 90s, it was getting popular. I don't know if any of you had the Virtual Boy from Nintendo. It was this like big red headset with, it was terrible, but it was still fun to play with. And the internet, it was creating Little Merman. Yeah, there are so many different ones. And now looking to how we are now evolving it to be used in healthcare and psychology and training. And where will we use VR next? Who's to say? I don't know if any of you have read the book or have watched the movie, but Ready Player One is a really good idea of where VR could be going. It's where the world around us is so terrible, we spend 90% of our life in this kind of virtual world. I hope it doesn't get quite that dystopian, but it's a really cool concept. Like I mentioned, VR isn't purely a headset. It can be any form of virtual reality. Do you know what, Eduardo? I agree with you. The film is not nearly as good as the book. Yeah, I agree with you on that. In terms of different way, you can say your faith system. I'm guessing because a lot of you may not have tried it. Do not worry. You've got what we can call caves. This is automatic virtual environment. Have any of you ever been in one of these? Like maybe if you've been to like a museum when they're trying to get it really immersive, they'll use projection screens and you're not wearing a headset, but around you is a virtual reality. They can look really cool. I've been into ones like a Van Gogh one. Van Gogh or Van Gogh? Never mind. But anyway, you're in it, you see all his flowers and he's like moving around. Then you've got the head mounted one, which is becoming really popular. And then you also have one where you wear like gloves. So you can feel and touch different things. And they've been around for a while now. I saw one where like you wear a glove and if you hug yourself, your partner in Australia or wherever they are can also get a hug. So you can, yeah, they're quite nice. I've never used one, but I like the idea. So there's lots of different types of VR. Oh, April's heard of the Nintendo Virtual Boy. It was a terrible console, but it was cool. Which part of VR do you think seems the most real? So you got virtual lifelike images, seeing like computer generated around you, like, oh, I'm really in a zoo. Wow, these animals look so real. Or having real good surround sound where the sound isn't just left or right, but proper 360, like spatial audio. What about physical feedback? So having like vibrations or when you're touching objects, being able to feel the texture, maybe having the movement that matches. So if you move your arm, the like avatar moves its arm. And you're basically seeing a digital version of yourself. Or could it be emotions? Like if you're in VR and someone is just going like, no emotions, you can't really connect with them. Nowadays, if you smile, it will smile. Or if you do thumbs up, it will thumbs up and it can do a match. Okay, so most of you like emotions would make it the most real. They are getting better, but for whatever reason, a lot of the time, VR characters still do not have legs. Very difficult to do for some reason. Yeah, they're just legless. So I think it's just more processing power. And because obviously the VR can map your face and it can map your hands, but it can't map your legs. The legs just, they don't really know what to do with them. But yeah, all of these are required ideally to create the real immersive experience. Now, moving beyond that, what could we actually use VR for? On this one, I want you to rank what you think are the top VR uses. Do you think having it for neurodiversity research, understanding the brain is the best use? Or do you think we could use VR for custom learning? For people who struggle in school with, say, dyslexia or ADHD, would VR be a better learning experience rather than a face-to-face teacher? What about for care? Just trying to help people with day-to-day living. VR and therapy, cognitive behavioral virtual therapy, research, trying to get more understanding and awareness in developing studies. There are so many different avenues we could use this futuristic technology. Custom learning is really good. As I'm doing my neuroscience degree at the moment, learning the brain is challenging because you can't see it. I've got a virtual thing where you can go inside the brain and you can move it around, you can look inside, you can see how electricity flows, you can have a skeleton. There's things which are able to bring things alive for visual learners far better than any teacher would be able to verbally tell you. Now, let's say if we're going to focus on autism, what do you think could be the biggest benefit when it comes to VR? I put three options I've done. We've got exposure therapy. This is to help with phobias. A lot of the time, those with autism, it's not the autism which is the challenge. It is the world around us and large environments, big noises, different experiences can create negative experience connotations. We've got social skills trainings. Maybe you really hate talking to multiple people or public speaking. You could do public speaking. There's this thing called the metaverse where it's like Mark Zuckerberg's virtual playground. And you can go, and there's this like comedy club. I've been to it a few times. It's just kids swearing at you, to be honest, but it has potential. We also got individual support, tailored experiences. Let's say everyone is so unique. What if we could create a completely unique experience that is tailor-made to you? All right, let's see what you said was the biggest one. Individual tailored support, yes. And I think that perfectly links in with ASD, autism spectrum condition. That's saying it's not one condition. There is so many different parts of it. Of course, a tailored approach would make the most sense. VR research is similar to real life situations. Believe it or not, remember, our brain gets easily confused. So it doesn't have to be picture perfect for us to believe it. If our brains needed it to be really real, you wouldn't be able to connect with an animation. Animation is not lifelike, but we buy into it. On here, I want you to tell me if it's true or false. First one, VR mimics real life in a safe setting. Do you think this is true? VR breaks lab and life gap. So when we're doing research, lab and real life, they don't always add up. Basically, theory doesn't match real life. We've got ecological validity limits accessing neurodiversity in VR. More research is needed, we don't know. And VR with ecological validity aids neurodiversity understanding. Does it actually help? Now let's see which one of these is correct and which ones are not, and I'll explain why. VR mimics real life in a safe setting. Yes. You could, for instance, let's say you're scared of dogs. If you just shoved someone in a cage of dogs, that's dangerous. But in VR, if it gets too much, you take your headset off, no more worry. VR breaks lab and life gap. The lab theory and real life, it's not one for one. You can't do all your research in VR and put it directly to lab and research. It's still not a direct one for one. We can learn from it, but let's say if you were to develop training on things that aren't real, probably not the best. And those two, it's validity accesses neurodiversity in VR. So again, VR is not a perfect way to represent neurodiversity. It mimics it, but it's not a one-for-one, but it does aid. The key difference between these two is one is saying, yeah, this is a one-for-one. The other one is saying it supports. While I've talked about a lot of the amazing things that VR can do, what do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to supporting individuals with mental health or require neurodiversity support? So let's say you've got mental health issues, you go to your GP and they're like, here you go, here's a VR headset. Why might this be a problem in some situations? Cost. It is expensive and you can't be giving every single person a VR. Another thing is hygiene. When I went to an event and I gave everyone my VR headset, I kept looking, it's so greasy and oily. I kept got bits on my head afterwards. So I kept on wipe it down. Sensory issues, they are very overwhelming. And while you can take the headset off, when it is properly strapped on your head, it's a bit difficult to just pull off and it could break it. Engagement, people might feel fobbed. Yes, like let's face it, you're just giving me a flipping headset. Where's my real support? Doesn't fit every situation, absolutely. While our brains are easily confused, some of us just do not buy into it. Have you ever watched an animation where the animation is so bad, you're like, I can't watch this, it's just terrible. Because we all have different thresholds. Engagement, sensory issues, yep, all of these, they can be very claustrophobic, yes. Comfort level, I'll be honest with you, they're not that comfortable for long periods of time. Maybe like 20 minutes. More than 20 minutes, I am not comfortable and I want to get out. Or even hypnosis, does it work on everyone? Yes, Ladonia, absolutely, just like hypnosis. It works for some, it doesn't work for others. So do not think that VR is a miracle solution. It is another tool that can aid us, but not everything. Some of the issues might be the accessibility. Is everyone able to get access to VR? Also, a lot of us are still learning how to use a computer, let alone VR machines. So some of the most vulnerable people in our society who would benefit from mental health support they're not going to be able to use a VR, not without additional support. And if we need additional support, then we're in the same situation where we're under-resourced. Adoption, one, can it be adapted? And also, do people actually use it? Ethics, is it ethically okay to put someone in an environment that they are terrified of? I know we can do it gradually, but you could see why not everyone would be okay with this. Success, is there proof it's actually working? Or are we just like, it looks fun, let's use it? And integration, how might it work with other elements of life? Oh, April says, another time I experienced VR was when I went to a food festival in Clapton 8 years ago. I rode a headset and watched a virtual roller coaster. Yeah, I've done those roller coasters. They make me feel so sick. If you ever use VR for the first time, do not go straight for the roller coaster. You'll never want to use VR again. Some of the upsides of using VR is research. It gives us new data that we haven't looked at before. We can control things in a really controlled setting. Let's say you want to do an experiment to see how someone's going to react. Every time you do that experiment, it will be exactly the same because you're repeating it. Custom therapies, it could be more unique. We've talked in previous webinars about tailored support. Downsides, there's some ethical reason, privacy concerns, access, it costs, tech is expensive. And let's face it, as soon as an organization buys it, it'll probably be outdated. And we need way more studying to really know if it's actually effective. It's still a very new piece of kit. All right, take a breath. Everyone has been brought up to speed on exactly what VR is. Let's take it to another level. We're going to be looking at how VR can actually help us, how it provides real-time feedback. We're going to be looking at, is it actually safe? Does it even work? And what are the downsides? And I think that is important to know because we can get really excited about tech. I love tech. But every time a new gadget or gizmo comes out, I'll waste my money and buy it and then realize it's terrible after a day. And we've always got to make sure we are investing in the right things. Not too dissimilar to when COVID happened and they brought all those really useless face masks. You wasted our money. Do not go out and buy things just because they're new and flashy. See if they actually work first. VR can be really useful in understanding a whole heap of mental health conditions. So from eating disorders, it can get people more familiar with, say, going into a restaurant and feeling comfortable with the surroundings, or eating a virtual burger and having people watch you. Anxiety disorders, it could do a virtual party simulation and make you feel more at ease with the surroundings. We've also got PTSD. So war veterans can be in a simulation where they'll hear explosions, which might be very triggering for them, but they can take the headset off and do it again and again until they get desensitized from that experience. We've also got brain injuries. Oh, I don't know why I did a gap there. Brain injuries. This is getting people more rehabilitation. Once you've had your injury, how can you get people back on track? What other uses do we have? We've got social anxiety. So yeah, this could be very much having people, virtual people, be looking at you and you getting used to the way they're gazing. And again, this isn't going to completely solve any challenges, but it is a really useful first step. Phobias, we've used the spider one already. It can be really great what people might do is use a really unrealistic spider and then over time get it more and more realistic. And then eventually you get desensitized. But in real life, a spider's a spider. You might be able to use a toy, but there's not really too many differences that you can use. And the last few, we've got dementia. We could do things that can help people remember and retreat them. And what other ones do we have? We've got psychosis. So helping people know when voices are real or not real, and eating disorders again. There are a lot of potential uses and they are already being used. They aren't prescribed on our health system, but they are done in a lot of studies at the moment. Let's pick a subject and let's go further into it. I want to use psychosis because there's been quite a lot of studies already on psychosis. VR, do you think it could be useful for psychosis? And on here, just rank how useful do you think it would be in all of these areas? Because like I said, it's good for some areas, it's not good for all areas. Can VR understand a psychotic episode? Rank its usefulness in studying their causes and persistence. Oh, Eduardo said social anxiety, getting used to surrounding areas similar to Google Maps. Yeah, I think that's a good way. When people are stressed about a journey, you can go on Street View and see every step of the journey. So we're already using it. On here, with psychosis, you can have a lot of sensitivity when it comes to other people. So yeah, of course, I reckon I could see that being quite useful. Childhood bullying, maybe you have a lot of trauma from previous experiences and this could readdress it potentially. But I do think you might want to have someone to talk with after. Physical attacks. If someone is having psychosis right now, I don't see how that could be useful. But if you have any ideas, let me know. I think if you're having an episode, VR is just going to make it worse. Ethnic discrimination. We do know that in a lot of societies and cultures that having mental health is really stigmatized. Maybe having a headset where you don't have to talk or tell anyone else, it could be really accessible to those who are really stigmatized by it. That feeling of defeatedness, yeah, I agree. I don't see how that could help. Crowded living conditions. No, VR does need a bit of space, doesn't it? Feeling fearful thoughts. I would say it could be quite useful because there are some really good mindfulness apps on VR where there's water trickling down the mountain. You can do like yoga poses. And I do find that's quite good. When I'm stressed, I put like this kind of colorful bubbles around me and they like pop and it's like music and unusual experiences. As we can see, while some things could be really useful, it's not going to solve the entire diagnosis. It might be certain characteristics or attributes which are associated. So VR for treatment for mental health, it is really broad and it could support a wide variety of uses. It could be used to assess symptoms on the spot. Diagnosis. If someone, they come into me, they're like, I have a phobia of spiders. Do you? Let's put the headset on with spiders. They start freaking out. Okay, you definitely have a phobia. That's one way. Or maybe even with psychosis, you could play different voices in the different ears and you could say, is this similar to what you normally hear? If so, now we have a more concrete way of diagnosing. Uses for exposure. I think this is a really good one. Anything that someone is scared of, you could emulate in VR. Anything. Customized therapies. Again, everyone is so unique. If you go into a doctor's surgery, they only have a list of so many things they can support you with. I once heard that someone had a phobia of oranges. What are you going to do with that? A VR orange? I wouldn't say I have a complete phobia. I have a strong dislike of belly buttons. I find them creepy. Maybe I could have a belly button VR experience. Ooh, that sounds horrible to me, but maybe. And also building safe coping strategies. When someone starts to feel overwhelmed, are there things that they can do to make themselves more calm and collected? Now I want to show you some real examples that are being used right this moment in order to support people with mental health challenges with VR. We've got this one here, and this is to help with eating disorders. And they use specialized apps for therapy and mindset. Let's say you really struggle with eating in public. You put the headset on and your job is to eat food, and maybe you've got people around you. You also might struggle with your body image. When you look in the mirror, you see someone who's like clinically obese and you're not. But so what they can do is you put the headset on and you'll look in a virtual mirror, and that virtual mirror will show someone who is the actual body size that you actually are. And it helps to kind of recorrect that disconnect between what you are. Yeah, let's say here, for instance, you could be in a changing room and you just look at your body, and this body is an accurate look of what you really look like. And some people really hate looking at their body. So this again is a very slow way of doing it. And if you were to move your arms or move your body, then the camera would move with you. So you can see, yeah, this is what you think you might look like to what you actually look like. And I think it shows promise. I could see it working for some people. I don't really know calculating visual faces. I'm not sure what's happening there. Oh, virtual sweets. Oh, guide your patients in choosing the best foods. Yeah, let's see what they actually choose, what they put on a plate, getting them to practice, getting use of not looking at calories while eating. I think it's been really useful. Look at, that person trying to pick up a little Coke can. What? Why? He just threw the Coke can on the floor. There was no need for that. You can see this is one use. Another use is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We all know when our troops go off fighting for the country, they see some horrific stuff. And PTSD is something that's really difficult to get rid of. Let's have a little look how it can be used for soldiers. So you can see he's holding a gun. I'm assuming it's a fake gun. And now he's back in some country that he's probably did like a service for. And he's going to hear lots of bangs and gunshots, and they'll be able to monitor their heart rate, their pulse. They'll be able to see how they deal with things. And over time, again, it gets easier and easier, or they can make things more realistic. And it's a very virtual experience because you're visibly seeing it, you're hearing it. When you move your head, the scenery goes around. It's a good way of putting someone in an environment to help them get desensitized without actually putting them in that environment. I think that's quite a good use. Oh, so on here, what do you think is true or false when it comes to psychosis traits? And knowing about what traits are true or false might help us know where VR may be useful and where it may not be useful. Does psychosis alter our worldviews? Does it mean hearing voices are very common? Can it enhance our focus? Is there no paranoia links when it comes to psychosis? Or are there sound distortion? Is sound distortion typical? Yep, it does alter our view in the world. What we see isn't necessarily what is actually happening. Sounds a lot like VR. Maybe you could use VR in order to create empathy for people who do not have psychosis, so they can show more kindness. Hearing voices is common. Again, you could put the headsets on and you could cancel the voices out or add additional voices. Because for some people, you might not be able to get rid of psychosis, but you could help people get more comfortable with those voices and learn to ignore them. Enhances focus? No, that's not part of it. No paranoia links. Sound distortion is quite typical. Now that we know what to expect, let's see it in action. VR pilot study to boost social skills in schizophrenia. The aim was a social skills training for schizophrenia. The method to target 7 social skills, so appreciating not all of them, for things like perceptions, communication, and to practice real life uses. And through this, you can see how the little VR people look. Again, they do not look that realistic, but I don't have to. The finding was VR was better than role play for real life skills. Let's say role play, you have to have quite a good imagination. It's also real cringy. VR can do the exact same thing, but arguably better, or at least it did in this situation. These are studies, and if you're interested, the links are at the top. There are lots of studies which are showing that it is beneficial. Another one was for job training, and this can also be used for autism, by the way, and I think it's really useful, is let's say you have an interview and you are terrified of your first day at work. You could go in the VR world and then you can see the office, you can try on clothes. When customers come in, you can see how you interact with them, and it can make you feel more comfortable. It found that people had higher likelihood of job success, and it also found that people who did this regularly were less stressed overall. Here you can see a little happiness meter. You can also strap it up to, like, say, a smartwatch, which monitors your heart rate, and you'll be able to see how stressful someone may find an environment. And you could increase the stress level by having more customers, more noises. But if it gets too much, you can take it back again. This could be a really great way of getting people back into the workforce. Maybe they might even use it in the job center in the future, rather than just telling you to look again on the internet and find a better job. There could be multiple ways of helping people. Would VR help you in job training to develop skills and reduce stress? So I'm curious to know, you've seen some of the ways which it has benefited people. Do you think it would work for you? I don't expect everyone to say yes, but for some of us, it might. I could imagine for public speaking, I could see it being quite useful when you have a virtual crowd or watching you while you're practicing your speech. When I was a best man recently, even though I do lots of public speaking, I was actually scared for the first time. And the reason is because the groom's dad was a heckler and I knew he would heckle me and I knew all the people. I did my speech in VR. I think it did help, actually. It's hard to say how much it helped, but it didn't not help. A lot of you think it would be helpful. There's no harm in trying it as well, because once you've bought the VR, it's really cheap to use. It's one of those things where there is an upfront cost, but then afterwards, it pays for itself. This is another example of someone who had social anxiety on tubes. They use virtual reality, cognitive behavior therapy for paranoia and social fears. Let's say you really need to travel around London, but you are terrified of the tube. You go on a virtual tube and you'll be able to see around you and get more familiar with it. They found that this was really good for a personalized treatment. So let's say you are particularly scared of the Northern Line, you could make a Northern Line representation. And it's also perfectly safe. All you have to do is take the headset off if it gets too much. And you can do it while people are observing you and they can monitor your progress over time. Like, for instance, maybe you're able to have the headset on longer each session, but it's getting easier for someone. Or you're able to monitor their heart rate or their breathing. Or did you have a VR heckler available? Do you know what? I didn't, Gregory, but yeah, You can get, but you can't get virtual hecklers, but you can go and to Metaverse to get real hecklers, which I have already had. Again, it's normally like 12-year-old kids swearing at you. Yeah, some things never change, even in the virtual world, but it does help for some of us. Question: is VR useful for managing psychotic disorders? Now, we talked about how it's useful for certain characteristics, but psychotic episodes, this is when you are seeing things that aren't real or you hear things that aren't real. Would a device which essentially does the exact same thing, could it be useful? We've got not suitable for this, uncertain, more research is needed, shows promise. I think, yeah, the middle one makes a lot of sense. I think more research is needed. It does sound like it's only going to add to the problem, but maybe it can help people cope. We focus so much on how we can cure someone and less on how we can help someone manage their current characteristics and challenges. And from what I've learned over the years on mental health, curing is best case scenario, but what we really should be doing is being able to learn to live with it and to manage it. Because who knows? With my OCD, I would love to cure it, but the most help I found for it is finding ways of being able to manage when I'm feeling particularly triggered. Here's one more example, and this is called avatar therapy for hallucinations and psychosis. And I think this is really interesting. The aim was to help psychosis patients with hallucinations. The findings was promising results, but more extensive studies are currently in progress. And the method was using avatar matching heard voices, enabling dialogue and different responses. If you saw someone and their lips weren't talking, okay, I'm having a hallucination right now. If they were talking and it was matching, you can see the connection. And they were able to do like lots of different tests in order to help people not get rid of their psychosis or hallucinations, but enable for them to recognize what is real and what is not really real. So giving them more tools to play with. And I think really interesting. It's just another tool in order to help people. I do not see this completely replacing what we do in other areas. But it's like when people say, oh, what's better for ADHD, medication or therapy? Why does one have to be better than the other? Often using things in combination can be more beneficial than relying purely on one or the other. Okay, here one, pick your creepiest avatar. And this is because I think AR, VR, because it needs so much processing power, because it's doing like whole 360 real-time views, it's not very good yet. It's not the quality that we've come to expect from watching things on a flat monitor. I think they look terrifying. Look at that. If I saw that, if I didn't have a phobia, I would have by the end. These are things that we need to grow on. And would you be able to connect with these people? I don't know. Personally, you think not, but when you're in VR, everything around you matches it. So your arms are the same. Everything looks the same. Yeah, okay, that one got number 5. I don't know, this person's eyes are quite creepy, but he has that kind of sinister, I'm probably going to kill you, I live next door to you vibe. Moving aside, VR has promise. It's only going to get better and better, but things only get better if we're spending that money. So where do you think the biggest amount of money is in VR? Do you think in the gaming industry, in healthcare or education? VR has typically been used for video games, but could we be seeing a future explosion in other areas? Okay. Yeah. Health education in school environments is massive. Not much money in it, but massive. Healthcare though, whether it's private or public, there's a lot of money to be had in it. And I do think this is an area we are going to see crazy amounts of growth. Don't get me wrong, video games are fun and the early adoption, but people get bored of games. But healthcare is something which is going to, I think, develop more and more, particularly because we have so much medication and ways of supporting physical health, but with mental health, we're a long way off. I punched my hand and it hurt, so I would say no, but maybe in the right environment. We've got VR needs assistance for safety. Do you think someone could use VR at home on their own in order to support their mental well-being, or do they still require assistance? Okay, yep, we still need assistance. VR can be self-administered. So could you say, I'll use VR, I'm having a bad day, or should it be something that is prescribed to you? Can VR can be safe with precautions? I would say so. You can actually set your boundaries so you don't like walk into the abyss. You can also get like a rug from IKEA, those like circle ones, and they're furry. If you walk off of the furriness, you're in the danger area. So there are things you can do to make it safer. I've got like straps on my little head thingies because I kept like throwing them. I was that person who, when I had a Wii remote, I'd throw out the TV. Or if I'm playing rounders, I'd throw the bat and hit someone in the face. I really struggle with grip because of my dyspraxia. Should we just be dishing it out to people willy-nilly, or should we do a little bit more research? And data privacy. Yep, crucial. I think a lot of you are quite on board with it, assuming that we are careful and smart about it. Do you think it's the immersion level that it's still not realistic enough for people to really benefit from it? Do you think it's the evidence? Yeah, there's a couple of studies, but it'd be nice to have a few more. Do you think it's that VR just costs too much money? Ethical concerns, evaluation, and do you think the biggest bottleneck is the fact that, say, institutions just do not want it? They're too old-fashioned. You try getting a university to use VR. They're dinosaurs. Okay, so we got, money. Money is typically a big one. Mobile phones, we all have them now, but at the start, it took a long time to adopt it and to get onto board. Just to wrap up with, there are 4 Ps of VR, which apparently are useful: personalized, predictive, preventative, and participatory. These are the kind of aspects apparently from Hood in 2011, which is needed for us to really adopt a VR and to really take it on board. The key takeaways is that VR is currently being used to help individuals with mental health and neurodiversity challenges. We do know that it is actually good at confronting fears safely. There's been no negative side effects at the moment. You can get real-time feedback, so it's really good to get instant results. Is it working? Is it not working? We know that it is useful for neurodiversity research, but it's early stages. We know that it is safe, but we do need more studies. We need more long-term studies. We know that it's promising, but it's not 100% better than what we're currently doing. It can help with jobs and skills. It can benefit people in the real life, and its future does look interesting. If you thought this was really interesting now, I'd love to learn more. This is a book I'd recommend. We've got How Virtual Therapeutics Will Revolutionize Medicine. And this is looking at all medical cases, both physical and mental. And it isn't just purely focused on neurodiversity, but it does give you a really good overview and a good starting point to learn more. And here are some lovely places where if you're interested and you want to learn more, you can check out some studies. Feel free to check out a recording of this. You can stop it and make sure you take a good note of all the research. The last and the next webinar of the year is VR in Neuropsychology. And this is going to be very much a complement to this session today. Today, we are focused on VR more general and mental health. We are going to be looking at it for neurology and predominantly focused on ADHD. How can ADHD and VR work together in perfect harmony? So do check out our little webinar. Oh, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. You can just go on our Eventbrite, check it out. And understanding ADHD and neurodiversity through virtual reality. But we are going to be looking at how VR can be used to create empathy, understanding, and how it may even support people. Here is our YouTube. If you want to subscribe, click that little subscribe button, ring that little ding bell, and you'll love it. And here's our contact information if you want to get in touch. Nice. And I really hope you found this useful. And hopefully I'll see you for the last one of the year. It'd be really good to go on a high. All right. Well, hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And hopefully VR is less scary for you and you're more enlightened to the possibilities that it might possess in the future. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate all the lovely feedback and the nice comments. See you next week. Thanks, everyone.